Welcome to the latest episode of Off the Ruck. I'm not John Ferguson. My name's Finn Morton. I'm new to the show. Great to be joined by Fergo here. Mate, Fergo, we teased an announcement on our live stream of the Brumbies vs Hurricanes the other day, but to point out the obvious, I'm here. But explain what that's about.
Yeah, so in the world of rugby, you always want to be able to find new and exciting voices. It's also about finding the right voices to be able to tell the right stories. And your Off the Ruck, your weekly rugby breakdown is all about picking those stories and being able to bring you guys analysis that is going to maybe perhaps make you fall further in love with rugby, or be able to bring tangential fringe fans into the fray and into the world of rugby. And you and I, we both write for publications, rugby publications, and we're rugby journalists, and that's what we do. And apart from the fact that we love the game, it's actually what we do as a job. And I think that Off the Ruck needed a little bit of a change, and this facelift is what I'm going to call it. Bringing you in.
I'm the facelift.
You're the facelift.
That's about the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. My dad always used to say to me growing up as a aspiring journo, I had a face for radio, so shout out to my dad for that one, but defying the odds and getting on video. It should be good fun, Fergo, mate. We just want to talk about rugby, grow the game, do what we can, talk about super test match stuff, All Blacks Wallabies, of course. There's a little-known series coming up called the British Irish Lions series, so we want to lead into that, lead into it strong. Women's World Cup later this year, all great stuff. So thanks for joining us, and Fergo, round 11. Let's get into it, mate. Alright, Fergo, round 11 of Super Rugby Pacific. It's in the books. Plenty of upsets, some massive results when it comes to finals implications. We're about a month or so out from the playoffs at the moment, and some teams like the Drua, maybe the Highlanders, not necessarily in the best spots right now, but what game or what results stood out to you the most in round 11?
I think you have to go straight to the last game of the round with the Brumbies losing for the first time to the Hurricanes since 2017 at home in Canberra. And it would have been a game that Larkin would have liked to have bagged and possibly even have accounted for in his calculations about squad rotation, where he's going to be finishing up at the end of the season. And now, all of a sudden, there's a Eddie Jones-sized cattle prod behind his team, because it is all stations go if they want to be genuine title contenders, and that means finishing top two, and that took a savage blow. I actually think that in my piece that I wrote this week for Rugby Pass, I actually said that this was a wake-up call, not a death knell for their final two hopes, because there are other games that the other two teams, Crusaders and Chiefs, that being in 1 and 2, will have some trouble with along the way. Brumbies nonetheless really need to wake up and start playing championship minute footy.
Definitely was a bit of a wake-up call, wasn't it? I mean, we'll talk a bit more about the game in a minute, but the Hurricanes down the wings, Kenny Naholo in particular,
deadly.
You know, he's, I think Andy Muirhead will be having nightmares for weeks to come. And
he's got a long list of nightmare subjects at the moment.
Not wrong, there's a few tough matchups or whatnot there, but I think for me, the game that stood out was the Crusaders. They went to Dunedin, played at Forsyth Bar, lost their fly half, Taha Kimura, after about 5-6 minutes of play to what seemed to be a pretty devastating injury. But the Crusaders, man, they didn't waver. You know, Rivers, Rahana, he came on and steered that ship, you know, very well. Steered the Crusaders around the park. He'd only played 13 or 18 minutes of Super Rugby, I think 13, before that match, and suddenly he played 75 throughout the whole match, and they won, you know, 43-10 in Dunedin. And like I alluded to before, not the best result. It doesn't leave the Highlanders in a very good situation going into round 12 and beyond. I'll just quickly run through the results. We'll get to talking about the games specifically in a minute, but just the results. Chiefs smashed the Force, didn't they? It was a bit of a weird game to start. We'll go through it one by one, but Harry Potter, magical on that way, pun intended, but the Chiefs winning 56-22.
Yeah, it was a tight first half, and I hate to be a person who subscribes to cliches, but nonetheless it was a game of two halves, because although the Chiefs did look like they were ominous in the first half, it really wasn't until the second that they really started putting on the blowtorch and things started to blow out. And it was a clear sign of poor tactical decisions about where to play in the field, but also there just wasn't enough venom in some of the tackles that were being made, and that allowed the Chiefs to get a roll on, whether it was offloads or quick ruck ball. That's something that New Zealanders love to talk about, LQB, lightning quick ball, and they got a lot of it. And when you've got players like Imoni Narawa and the deadly centres that they have in Quintupaya and also Anton Leonard-Brown, you can shift space and be able to make that space all around the field. So Force were in trouble all over the field, but I think their inability to slow the breakdown really, really cost them, because it allowed the Chiefs to play the game that they love to play.
They did that. They put 56 points on the force without Damien McKenzie, who wasn't picked in the 23 this week. Josh Jacob stepping up to wear that number 10 jersey. I think it's a matter of when he plays for the All Blacks, right? Like, he's a young kid, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say he should be playing Test match rugby necessarily, even against the French, but you know, he does seem to be leading that next generation of first fives in New Zealand. You've got Ruben Love as well, Harry Godfrey, who I hope returns pretty soon.
I think
for the Hurricanes.
On DMAC, I think he's nursing a bit of a hand injury, and I'm not sure what is with All Blacks 5'8" and getting hand injuries, because Bodie Barrett was out earlier in the season with a hand injury, but he's back. But when you've got Josh Jacob, who's someone who did the entire preseason and also started the season at 10, you're full of confidence, really, if you're Clayton McMillan. You're not scared to throw Jacob back in that position after DMAC played, and I think only a handful of games there this season so far. Obviously, he's been at 15. Yeah,
I mean, Josh Jacob had a bit of a probably performance to forget against the Waratahs in Sydney a few weeks ago. But again, the kid bounced back. Great result for the Chiefs. Well and truly stamping their authority in the competition again, reaffirming their standing as one of the competition favourites. But moving on, Reds Blues. You know, the Reds. What a result this is for not just those north of the border in Queensland, but for Australian rugby as a whole. Beating the Blues 35-21, the defending champions. Some serious strife. 5 points outside the 6, but again, time isn't on their side.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there was a little bit of a confusing feeling around this clash, because last year, when this exact same clash, the Anzac clash, we saw the arrival of the Junkyard Dog, so Tim Ryan on the wing, where he scored that hat-trick, and it was just electric.
Give me a bark.
Yeah. No, I'm not Sonny Bill Williams. I'm not going to bark for you. But then everyone saw that game as a win for the Reds, but it wasn't. It's been a while since they've beaten the Blues, and so I just think that it was really interesting how that narrative has kind of been remembered. It was such a joyous occasion for so many reasons for Australian rugby players and teams, but it wasn't a win.
It was one of the greatest games of rugby I've seen in a long time. It was high scoring, and I think it was Sam Knock, wasn't it, at the end, scoring a try a minute into added time, effectively, 81st minute, final play territory. But you're right, that was kind of remembered as a very positive result for Australian rugby and the Reds. But look, for them to go, let's say, one step better, actually beat the Blues this time around, that's important, and they're doing that with a pretty star-studded backline. I think we'll get onto that in a second. But as for the Blues, really in some strife at the moment. Beauden Barrett came off the bench, apparently illness related, as to why he wasn't lining up at first five for the Blues. But you know, they're 5 points outside the 6. They've got 4 games left to play. I think the Western Force this week to kick things off. They need to start winning. They need to start winning now. It's crazy, because I think before the season started, I picked them to win the competition.
100%.
I think most people did, right?
I was thinking, like, they'll just continue to steamroll. They'll continue to have their ascendancy through the middle, and they'll be relentless. They have been anything but relentless. They have been sloppy, and they have been undynamic. And although they do have a very, very nearly entire All Blacks roster, that is not the kind of quality that is coming out of them right now. And maybe it's just a little bit too much of the same for a period of time, like the Reds had under Brad Thorne. There is tough love that really works. Maybe that really works to turn the Blues around, but I'm unsure whether that kind of tough love is speaking to this group at the moment, because it's not a roster change that's occurred. No change has occurred, and perhaps that is the issue.
Beauden's come in, and in theory made that squad even better, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's been some injuries. You know, Sam Gary's out for the entire season. He was brilliant last year, but tell you what, I feel sorry for anyone who lives in Auckland, considers himself a Blues fan, but supports the Panthers as well in the NRL. I know you're not the biggest rugby league fan, Fergo, I get that, but Penrith, they're currently last.
Episode 1, you're brave coming in here, starting the rugby league off the bat.
No, but it's just, you know, Penrith, 4-time defending champions, made the last 5 NRL grand finals. They're 17th. So again, if you live in Auckland, you're a Blues fan and you support the Panthers, I feel for you. I'm praying for you. You know, it's a pretty tough start to the Super Rugby or sporting seasons in 2025 if you are a fan of those two teams. Moving on, Battle of the Pacific, Moana Pasifika, getting the job done against the Fiji and Drua 34-15. Massive result for both teams, to be fair. I think they were the bottom 2 teams on the ladder going into round 11, and for either of them to make a charge towards the playoffs, winning that match was essential. You would think that for the Drua to make the playoffs now is all but impossible. Not impossible, but you know, it's very unlikely.
Mathematically improbable. Not that I was particularly good at maths at school, but even I consider those odds are short.
I'm still not good at maths. You know,
it's
Yeah, the Drua. Very unlikely to make the playoffs. Improbable, as you said, Fergo. I thought, Moana, they turned it on. And they always look relatively comfortable, I think. RD12, I'm not sure if you've seen this try.
I have.
Well, it wasn't a try.
Exactly.
And I think it was the greatest...
That's what I was about to say.
It's the greatest disallowed try in rugby history, and it didn't just deserve 5 points, it deserved 10. It was that good. To see a back rower get the ball from nowhere, like he was in no man's land, really. Like, nothing was going on. Decided, I'll chip kick this ahead. Ball set up perfectly, and he capped it off with a swan dive. For it to be called back isn't it justice? No, it was honestly, it would have been a try of the season contender. Made up for it, Moana, with his brother Julian scoring in the corner about a minute later, but still, what a try, Fergo. What a no try. Is that the right phrase?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it'll be a try in the memories of Moana fans and Pacific fans, Super Rugby Pacific fans, forever. That's going to be in there along with the greatest tries, because although it wasn't recorded on the scoreboard, I think the elation and the pure hype, because around a player that is the current world player of the year. Rounding back from last year.
He's former 2023.
Yeah, 2023. Yeah, a former world player of the year. You just don't forget things like that, especially someone who winds back the clock, because he was a sevens player, and you've seen clips of him charging down the sideline when he was playing sevens, and he wound back the clock in his early 30s now. He's not showing it at all, although there is a lot of tape in and around his joints.
Oh yeah, you're not wrong. That's very true. But at what stage do fans issue an apology to Moana Pasifika and RD as well? Because when RD signed for Moana, I think there was a fair bit of criticism about what this could mean for him as an All Blacks player. Was his standard of play going to drop? But I think he's gotten better. I have a lot of people on my TikTok at the moment saying he's the best player in the world again, and I think that's not an inaccurate statement, is it?
No, and I think that he's the tide that rises, like all boats rise with a rising tide, all boats rise with a rising tide, and he is that tide. But I think also what he's been given is a cultural and spiritual home for where he can express himself, and something like that can really elevate who you are on and off the pitch. And I think his responsibility, as well as his love for his community, his people, as a proud Samoan man, he is really ticking all those boxes. Obviously, the All Blacks have a very strong Polynesian and Maori connection, but nonetheless, this is a different kettle of fish, and that's what makes Moana such a unique and special club. And the fact that they've now managed to get their very own Moana Pasifika styled bin to bang on in their post-match game song, I think that is just the kind of banter and kind of props that this competition needs.
You can't copyright a bin. You can't trademark banging on a bin, right? But it's their thing. And I think Mark Talayer of the Blues, I think he was banging on a Blues bin after they beat Moana earlier in the season. So something I'm not...
Sacrilege.
It's not okay, is it?
No.
It's in rugby league you see a lot of players banging on eskies and stuff, but or chili bins if you're a Kiwi. But anyway, moving on. The other two results, we've touched on them already. Crusaders beating the Highlanders. Will Jordan standing out with a double. Cody Taylor as well, I think he had a double. So All Blacks standing up.
He did really well for my fantasy team, just FYI. If anyone's flying around in fantasy, the hookers are delivering. I don't know why. Like Ricky Kelly earlier in the season, Cody Taylor when he's come back, even someone like Nick Dolly's doing pretty well. And then you've got kind of fringe hookers that you don't talk about that much, but the Highlanders of Vikenna, extremely well. Asaf Moore, when he gets on a steamroll, he's racking up points. So big shout out to Cody Taylor because he got me 74 points clean.
That's why he plays the game. There goes a few fantasy teams, so he's going to be chuffed that you've given him a shout out there. And
you're welcome.
Yeah, God. Thank God for the Cody Taylor, right? And the final game, again, touched on that, Hurricanes beating the Brumbies. Billy Proctor, very good. Kenny Naholo, extremely good. It's going to be fascinating what the All Blacks do with their selection later this year. But just a quick ladder rundown. We've got the two top dogs, I think clear title favourites, you'd have to say, after 11 rounds. The Chiefs, Crusaders, in those top two spots. Then two Australian teams, the Brumbies, Reds. The Canes rise into the top six in 5th place. So their playoff hopes are well and truly back on track. The Waratahs drop out of the six. Devastation for Australian rugby. Is it time for panic?
I think it's actually surprising they were in there to begin with, considering the fact that they couldn't win away. They were winning at home, but it's also not that they've beaten the Chiefs at home. That's their greatest victory. That's their greatest victory, and that's their greatest achievement this year so far.
The greatest victory in Waratah's history, eh? Or at least for the last decade.
Pretty
It'd
close.
be up there. Be up
Pretty
there.
close.
No, it's not all panic stations for the Tars yet. I think there are two different ladders, and we had. I think I said this on the stream the other day, but I think I'm hilarious, so I'm going to say it anyway. But say it again. But you know, if all Super Rugby games were played in Sydney, then the Waratahs have been number one. They're undefeated at Allianz, and you know we've been lucky enough to watch a fair few of those games. But away from home, they're winless. You know, so that's a cause for concern. Up to them whether they can get their season back on track. And we'll get onto the upcoming fixtures in a second, but they've got the Brumbies this week in Canberra, so huge game that one. Some news or talking points for this week, Fergo. I think you wanted to touch on the Reds, the backline. Obviously, Isaac Henry back in the mix for West Bulldogs and QPR up in Brisbane, which is fantastic to see. But just generally, how do you find a place for him in that Reds backline now?
Well, I wanted to bring it up because it was an extremely impressive display from the Reds backline, who is a little bit undersized if you start comparing them to the size of the Blues backline. They're massive. AJ Lam and Ricky Iwani are 100 kilogram plus centers, and they're both above 190 centimeters tall or thereabouts. And then you look at Hunter Paisami, he's around the 100, I think he's about 98 kg, something like that. But he's, you know, not 190 centimeters, he's quite a fair bit shorter. And then you've got someone like Dre Pacquiao, he's not as short, but he's not up around the 100 kilogram mark, and he's really young. He's fresh out of being, you know, under 20s eligible and whatnot. And he hasn't really been on the map for a lot of Queenslanders. And you don't have any Filippo Dungunu, you don't have a Josh Fluke, and then all of a sudden you welcome back Jock Campbell into the frame.
How good was he? Jock.
Really good.
Fantastic.
He's a smart footballer. He is a slight player, but he is a smart footballer.
He's like a Ben Smith, isn't he? You know, the way he plays the game. He doesn't overplay his hand, does the basics very well. He's played a couple games, or is it just the one for the Wallabies a few years ago, Stade de France?
Yeah, I think he has 2 or 3. I think he has 2 or 3.
He debuted against Scotland at Murrayfield, I think, off the bench. But it's hard to see how a player of that calibre, you know, he is so good, but it's hard to see how he can get back into that Wallabies team. Maybe if Les Kiss is the next Wallabies coach, maybe he'll do Jock a favour.
He got a little bit shafted amongst the hype of Jordan Bataille playing 15. That never came to fruition. I never thought it would. I preferred Bataille on the wing or at 13. I think his size and his power and his ability to be able to not necessarily be a ball player, so I wouldn't play him at 12, but that's where I saw him. But then for some reason, Brad Thorne just started seeing him as a 15. But you have a smart footballer who can play second pivot in Jock Campbell, and then Jock Campbell got injured. It's been a really, really unfortunate run for him. It's great to see him back. On your earlier question about Isaac Henry.
Jordan Bataille, just quickly, mate. Yeah. Fullback, wing, centre, all great things, but I see him as a tight end. You know, LA Chargers, right? Like, I'm keen to see how that journey goes, but it's yeah, good luck to him. If he can stay on the pitch and stay out of the injury ward, then. Right, Fergus, moving on into round 12 this week. Massive for the finals implications, what it can mean. Always is in Super Rugby at this stage of the season, but first game of the round, Friday night, Blues versus Force. Quick summary, how do you see it playing out? Who do you see?
Yeah, off the bat, I'd say the Blues defend their park, Eden Park. They defend their home. It's going to be a really tough assignment, but it is one of those games where I can see the Force picking up a losing bonus point, because it does come down to try scoring, and that is something that the Force have shown that they can do, being able to put 22 points on the Chiefs last week, although they conceded 54. The Blues are nowhere near as deadly as the Chiefs, nor the Hurricanes, which they played a couple of weeks earlier at home, and they got a 17-all draw. Although they definitely could have had more points, they didn't end up, and it ended up being the games and the year's first draw. I think it'll come down to who can score the most points, and I know that's not necessarily a big revelation to a lot of people, but the defense of both sides is not been the greatest either. So there we go. The Blues at home, bonus point.
They can match it with these Kiwi teams, but I think versing a Kiwi team in New Zealand, that's a different beast. That's a completely different challenge, and I think, unfortunately for the Force last week against the Chiefs, we just saw that it's very easy to get played off the park, and I can't see the Blues losing at home. I think they'll get a winning bonus point, and you know, depending on other results, very well could rise into the 6, which, if they get there, look, if you were the Chiefs or the Crusaders, say come playoffs, you have one of those top 2 spots, if you end up versing the Blues, hosting the Blues, that's still a game that you're very nervous about, right? Like, if they can make the 6, they're a smoky. But I think it'll be fascinating to see how it plays out. Second game of the round, Fiji and Drua versus the Queensland Reds in Lautoka, a bit of a fortress for the Drua, who have really struggled this season. We've seen some great rugby from them for years. This year hasn't really been that. They don't look like a team that will make the 6. They look like wooden spoon favourites at this point, but can they turn that around? Can they defy those words I just muttered by beating the Reds?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see. The really important thing to note is that the Reds are still desperate for that top 2 finish, whether it's out of reach or not mathematically, not really. They need results to go their way, but they're going to have to try to do their part in making that dream a possibility. And so that will mean a win in Lautoka, in the fortress for the Fiji and Drua. And although they had a pretty bumpy ride before the bye, afterwards they've proven now beating the Blues quite comprehensively at home, that they've got another gear in them, which we always know they've had. They kind of lost their way earlier, but I think that if they want to be serious about finals, they're going to have to put this Fiji and Drua team and then away, and they're going to have to do it really well. So I think a bonus point win.
That's a game changer too, right? The idea that if they finish top 2, Australian teams have defended their home court really well this year. If they could host the Chiefs or the Crusaders potentially in a semi-final, that's completely different to if they're versing that same team across the ditch in New Zealand. So, like you said, Fergo, massive game this one. I think the Drua, while Lautoka is a fortress, I've said that, the Reds are too good. And I think the Drua just aren't the same force they once were. They did beat the Tars at home the other week, but I think the Reds will be too good. Moving on, massive Kiwi derby, Hurricanes Chiefs. This is a rematch of the semi-final we saw last season when Wallace Atiti ran riot. That was probably the game where everyone went, this guy has to be in the All Blacks. That really propelled him into that selection frame, or into the frame of like, he's a must pick. He was sensational. The Hurricanes lost that one at home. They would have hosted a final for the first time since 2016. If they had beaten the Chiefs, wasn't to be. Chiefs went on to lose their second final in a row, unfortunately. Hopefully they don't make that a hat-trick this year. But
The bridesmaid.
Yeah, that's the way it is at the moment for the Chiefs. But how do you see this playing out?
Yeah, Chiefs. Even though it is in Wellington, it is clear to see what the Hurricanes were able to do to the Brumbies last week at their home turf. The Chiefs don't have the same type of weaknesses. They have powerful wingers in Imoni Narawa and Leroy Carter, who's a very adept tackler, and someone like Kenyon Hollow, who had an absolutely barnstorming game against the Brumbies, is not going to be able to find that space or time against those type of wingers. Now, of course, we don't know what the squads are going to be, but you can imagine that those players are a good bet to be on the wing. Likewise, in the centres, you've got probably Quinn Tupaia and Anton Leonard-Brown, if not Daniel Rona, slotting in one of those positions, and then that's going up against Billy Proctor and Higgins, who's an extremely exciting prospect, but nonetheless, the Hurricanes managed to go through and around the Brumbies. That is not something they're going to be able to get away with in Wellington at home against the Chiefs. And so I think the Chiefs actually are going to be able to do a repeat of last year's semi-final, and they're going to put them to the sword.
That in itself seems to highlight the difference between a team like the Brumbies and the Chiefs, maybe, doesn't it, in terms of championship pedigree or being a genuine contender, not a pretender, doesn't it? I think the Chiefs across the park a lot more solid, maybe in their defence, than what the Brumbies were last week. So on the stream last week, the other day, I played around with the idea of I'm not going to reveal where my allegiance lies. I know there were a few people, Mitch Foster, namely,
From Scrumbags.
Yeah, and he was pretty.
He wanted to know.
He did, and I get it. Everyone does. It's, I can't walk down the street without someone asking me who do I support in Super Rugby. So I get it.
They want to know.
They do, and I'm not going to reveal it because it's my secret.
Man's gonna have a code.
It's just the way I am, Fergo. I'm a professional. I'm a journalist. I'm impartial. So while I'm not going to give that away, I will say I think the Hurricanes win by 50.
So
so I will go with that. Read into that which you will. Moving on, Brumbies Waratahs. We were there at Sydney's Allianz Stadium earlier this season when the Waratahs snapped a massive losing streak against the Brumbies by 4 points. I think it was 28-24 from memory. If that is right, that's pretty good ball knowledge from me, I'll be honest, because it's quite a scoreline. But I can't remember the last time the Tars beat the Brums in Canberra, in the capital, and I think that streak's going to continue.
Yeah, look, the only way that the Waratahs win this game, a little bit of analysis that you might not be across, is that they only win in Sydney, and so this is not in Sydney, and so that's why the Brumbies going to win this contest. there is nothing in the toolkit for the Waratahs that actually suggests that they can do a number on the Brumbies. There is no breakdown pressure, whereas the Brumbies have a lot of it, but it's not in Sydney, so it's going to be game over real quick.
Yeah, I just want to kind of address that. I think it's important. That was a joke from Fergo. Like, I've written this a couple of times actually for Rugby Pass, but yeah, if Super Rugby was played in Sydney, then the Tars would win it, but it's not, so they won't. So yeah, this will be a Brumbies win for sure, man. I think like we want to see the Tars do well, and everyone expected maybe that they would be a bit more of a contender coming into the season because they have something like 14 Wallabies in their starting side, or in their 23 effectively. Like Isaac Kailia can't make the 23, and he started against the Springboks in Brisbane last year. So, I mean, by the time this comes out, or in a couple of days, that could be proven wrong, and he might be starting. Yeah. But yeah, I can't see that game going in the Waratahs' favour.
I think though, like without selling the contest short, there are Wallabies trials throughout this fixture. There's one's happening at 9, there's one's happening at 10, there's one happening in the centres, on the wings, fullback in the front row. This is not a dead rubber by any chance, both in terms of competitiveness of contest. There are players in there who are dying to play the most important series of a Wallabies career, because there are no other series that compare to it. The British and Irish Lions, mere months away. It is like, you can start counting the days. It's less than 100 days. So it's game on. They have a lot to play for. There are fringe players that we were wanting to make themselves known to Joe Schmidt, whether it's for the Waratahs game or merely for the test game, 1, 2, or 3. It is not a dead run by any means. There are players in there who have a lot to play for.
That's a massive game. That's right, massive game. Again, what could this mean for the AUNZ Invitational team, the Wallabies, or potentially even just spots in those Super Rugby squads against the Lions?
Andy Muirhead, Tristan Riley, both proud Indigenous men, Pasifika and Indigenous First Nations team. Whether we don't see them in gold, you and I have discussed that previously, and we'll continue to do so because there are impressive athletes. Nonetheless, they will feature against the Lions some way, shape, or form.
I think they will, absolutely will. And moving on, Fergo, what do you think of Sunday Arvo footy? You a fan?
Afternoon footy, beers in the sun. Well, I mean, it's in Dunedin, isn't it? So it's like, it's under the roof. So you got the zoo. So
the zoo will be going off.
Yeah,
always does. Actually, my first ever uni offer was the University of Otago. I'm not saying I regretted not going, but I think my university experience would have been a lot different if I did go, because it does look like a lot of fun down there. But Highlanders hosting Moana. These are two teams who, look, I think at the moment they're obviously both outside the 6. I've written off the Highlanders a few times. I just think they're not quite it. Moana coming off a big win over the Drua. They've beaten the Crusaders this season. They've shown that they're maybe a top 6 worthy side. I think what Super Rugby needs this season is for an Aussie team to make the semis and challenge a Kiwi team in the semi, but also for Moana to make the 6. That's what everyone wants to see. I think they're everyone's second team. You can't watch their social media and not love it. It's just a lot of fun, but I don't see them winning this one. I think the Highlanders will be too good. Tapatapanawai, Tagato, Cam Miller at 10 presumably. Falau Fakatava, but it's a quality team, and that's just the backs. Yeah, how do you see it playing out?
Yeah, I think that both are extremely strong defensive sides. They're both tackling around 90%, and the Highlanders have the highest dominant tackle count. You're not going through this Highlanders side. You can go around them, you can find gaps, but you're not going straight through them, and that is something that's a big credit to them and Jamie Joseph for this year. The Moana side have proven that they can score a heck of a lot of points, and so they won't be trying to go around them, even though they probably could with players like Tailoa and the Sevilla brothers now both playing in the team, as well as you got speed out wide to burn with Carrington Moifala. So it is an extremely impressive roster, and I just think that Tano Humanga has this side in a happy place. And with 2 points outside of the top 6 currently, they have a lot to play for. The Highlanders do as well, but they'll need a bonus point from this to be able to get close to the bottom place side as it stands right now. So the Moana side, they're going to get the win. Sunday over footy, regardless, the Zoo is going to be kicking off.
So much, guys, for coming along for the ride for the new type of format that we have here at Off the Rock and the new edition of Finn Morton. We loved having you along, and I think that this is, and it could be the start of something a lot more fun for the viewers, but a good bit of fun for you and I.
Something special, Fergo. What do you
Yeah,
think?
mate, absolutely.
You got to stop looking at me so lovingly.
Yes,
but,
no, look in the eye.
I do enjoy being here. It's been a bit of fun. We've been talking about this for probably a good month now, I think, and it's good to get it off and running. And yeah, good bit of code this weekend. Keen to see how it plays out, and yeah, big year ahead.
Yeah, and on a big year ahead, there are big events that we touched on in the intro coming on up. But I think that for you guys here waiting on the channel about what you're expecting from us, we'll be starting with a weekly episode, and that will be the singular point of content, most likely for the entire channel. And then we'll see how we go when we head into the bigger fixtures. And then we'll see maybe for Super Rugby finals, maybe we dip in an extra episode here and there. But for now, it's just going to be a weekly episode. So you can catch us here. You can absolutely catch me on Rugby Pass, where I write as contributor. And you can also catch me on the platform X, formerly known as Twitter. I don't really like that saying. But anyways, at John B. Fergo. We'll whip them all on here on screen so you can see where you can catch us. Where can the people catch your stuff and our stuff?
Yeah, so I ramble a bit too much on Rugby Pass. I write about 25 pieces a week. You can go catch them. Let me know what you think of them in the comments, because go be a fan too. Like, as in, be nice to me, because some of the comments can be pretty critical, mate. So that's the life of a journo. But also find me on TikTok, Finn Morton Sports. Try putting out at least one video a day. So just chatting about code and basically doing what we do here, just having fun talking about the game we love. So it's good fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And so whether you follow us here, just always remember to give the channel a like and a subscribe. That helps us grow the channel. Give us ideas for content in the comments below. We want to be down there with you, and that allows us to be able to create more rugby content for rugby lovers like yourself. But enjoy the weekend of rugby that's coming up. It's going to be in a few days. We'll be all back next week to wrap it all up. So until then, signing off from a new facelifted, new look, Off the Ruck, your weekly rugby breakdown. Signing out.